everyone. Welcome to Raw with Rasha. I am going to be talking to you today about spiritual abuse and fake gurus. As a Hindu who grew up in the United States, I was kind of used to seeing these different gurus coming in and people just turning their lives over to them. I never understood quite why. People would leave their families to go follow this guru and adapt their way of life, only to find out years later that those gurus were frauds. And especially at a time like right now, where people are just searching for some type of solace, for peace, looking towards spirituality, it is so important to know who you are learning from and what exactly you're learning. And I bring this up because right now the Kundalini community has been shattered and is conflicted. If you haven't heard, their founder, Yogi Bhajan, who actually brought Kundalini meditation to the US and is the founder of the Happy, Healthy, Holy organization, 3HO, who is, by the way, responsible for making the yogi teas, has been allegedly accused of sexual abuse, money fraud, a whole bunch of different things, including child abuse, and which really all comes down to spiritual abuse. So I've invited my friend and someone who I've also learned Kundalini meditation from, Mina Bahadori, who is a yoga and meditation teacher here in Los Angeles, to talk about the difference of a spiritual organization and what you could possibly call a cult, and just really how this has affected and torn apart the community. She's been really vocal in speaking to people about it. And, it's affected both of us. I haven't been Kundalini was a part of my practice, and I've kind of been torn on the validity of it, because in addition to all the other frauds, now the question is this practice made up? It's almost like there was a part of Sikhism and Hatha Yoga that was taken together and just combined to make up something. So let's talk to Mina more about this. Mina, for someone who's taught Kundalini yoga and meditation, and I know now you currently aren't. And by the way, Mina was one of my teachers that I was learning it from. How has this emotionally impacted you? Because you've been doing this for a few years.
Yeah, well, I did find out about all this in February, and I felt my world came crashing down. And, many times I wanted to walk away from all of this altogether. I'm still trying to figure out if there's anything that can be sustained from these teachings, but it's definitely taken a toll. My mental health has fluctuated because I haven't really been disciplined in my own personal practice. It almost put a bad taste in my mouth about spirituality, and what can be trusted, what can't be trusted. So it definitely was hard. It still is hard, but I do feel a sense of community with many people that I went through this training with. And because I've talked, very openly on Instagram, a lot of people have reached out to me as well, about how it's helpful to do certain talks with people in the community and just share how, this has affected us and have different perspectives from people in the community. But one thing that gets me the most is the fact that there are still studios today who defend Yogi Bhajan. Studios have put out certain videos, for example, that have this subconscious hypnosis in the video telling you that you cannot separate from Yogi Bhajan unless you literally want to suffer for the rest of your life.
So let's talk about that conflict of the people who are saying, yes, we need to make a change, and people closing their studios, versus others saying, no, Yogi Bhajan was not responsible for this. He couldn't be a man like this.
Yeah, it ties completely back into just cult logic. And I, refrained from saying that word for a long time because there is so much beauty in it. But if you really look at it, he embedded this sense of, silencing within his own teaching. So he said from the very beginning, if you disconnect from your teacher, basically you'll be damned and you won't find a teacher again. This is your one chance, so you basically can't blow it. And he said, people will slander me and people will talk negatively and you cannot listen to that. So he really set it up to where he brainwashed people into looking out for people who were going to talk down on him to protect himself. So he was smart. So for all this information to then come out about how he was completely out of integrity and like did not live the practice at all, and to even like find a lot of the things in the teachings that I didn't notice before that are super problematic, especially now that we are, coming into more of like a divine feminine awareness and awareness of like white supremacy and how problematic that can be, and just an awareness around the Me Too movement. There's so much that has happened post Yogi Bhajan's death that I feel like has allowed this space for us to really critically look at what his teachings actually were, because my specific teachers I feel like just taught like the fluff and like the good stuff, but there is a lot of like homophobic, even racist, sexist rhetoric in these teachings that I just didn't even explore before this.
I want to ask you one more thing about trauma, because so many people are now coming forth who were part of Yogi Bhajan's community, but I can't even imagine 30, 40 years later, the trauma that they went through. From your experience of talking to people, how are they dealing or coping with this?
Well, there's a lot to repair, and most of them are in therapy. Most of them have complex PTSD. Most of them have strained relationships with their families because, Yogi Bhajan prevented a tight-knit unit. He separated families, which we know today is just like absolutely sickening.
I just feel like our spiritual community has become so saturated and in a bit commercialized that we're moved past the point of what the basic essence was. What can we tell people, Mina, who are looking or finding their path in spirituality, and what should we look out for when you are? I mean, I think you mentioned a little bit of that, but to give them the confidence that it's all within you and not to put that trust so much into another human being.
Absolutely. Yeah, just being mindful of if that person is telling you how many times to see them, like, scheduling, you see me next week and then the week after that and the week after that, like creating that codependent relationship. That's something, that you should run away from. And also just being mindful of if they're imparting certain fear, if you don't do this, something bad will happen type of rhetoric. Like any superstition is something to look out for and just walk away from. And just like finding teachers who do seem like a human rather than like people who are pretending to be super pure and honest. Teachers who are able to, like share space and also like show their own humanity, like show their mistakes and their faults and like take ownership and accountability of how they are not perfect. Because I think thinking that your teacher is perfect and superior is one of the biggest issues.
Absolutely agree. And I think even asking questions and doing your research, there's nothing wrong with that. I think sometimes people feel intimidated to ask questions. What's next for you then as far as teaching? I know that you've kind of held back on teaching Kundalini at this time, but you are a yoga and meditation teacher. So what are you teaching, and how can people look out for your work if they want to take classes with you?
Yeah, well, I do still teach a form of yoga. It's very fluid now. I've taken a breathwork training this past weekend, and that's something I'm very passionate about, bringing forward. Such a cathartic, empowering, cleansing practice that's all about the person doing the work. The teacher is just there, like standing there holding space, but they're not doing anything to you. It's the person who decides how much they want to heal and like how deep they want to go, and it's all coming from their own breath. And as well, I'm also doing Reiki, teaching people Reiki, and doing healing.
I think we need to make people aware that there is a difference of being part of a spiritual organization or going to teachers where you're learning versus really following just one guru or one saint or somebody that you're so stuck on and that becomes your way of life. Because people are suffering from having made this a way of life for 30 years or more.
Exactly. And because, their livelihood is tied to it, I think also it would shatter their identity if they admitted that this guy, was just opportunistic rather than a master. He was psychic. I've heard from many people who's been in the community for over 25 years who do say he had psychic abilities. He could tell you, what was going to happen and it would happen. And that he could read people's thoughts and things like that. But that doesn't mean you're a good person. That's where it comes down to it. You can have all the abilities in the world, but it depends on how you use them. So now going forward, I feel people just need to be much more cautious of how their teacher is speaking. Like, for example, I had a teacher recently who would not tell you what to do. You would ask him a question and he would say, honestly, you're going to do what you want, so I'm not going to like impose my belief on you. You can take this anywhere, which is very different from Kundalini yoga, where they're like, you have to do it this way. If you do it that way, you're going to, basically suffer for the rest of your life and many other lives.
Mina, thank you so much for being on Raw with Rasha. This is a topic that we could have an endless conversation on. And guys, you can follow Mina. I've got her Instagram handle right there. She's been holding a lot of conversations around this, but I think it's so important, if you're watching this, to please understand what spiritual abuse is and the false gurus that are out there. No human being should be given that much power, at least in my opinion.
Absolutely. The power is within.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another Raw with Rasha.